And then there were four. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn here on the Interrap Sports Network. With your boy Matty B on the call, the quintessential and Eagle pregame entertainment. Kyle Quinn, we're going to the NFC Championship game, and all is right in the world. Would you agree or disagree?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what how you define that. My lifespan is probably now 5 years shorter than it was before Sunday, and even 5 more years shorter than it was the Sunday before. I can't keep doing this, Matt. Can't keep doing it. I
Kyle,
will, but I can't.
It's been the secret to success all season long. I don't know if they're capable of doing it any other way. We are going to look back on the Rams before we look ahead on the NFC Championship game against probably one of the more unlikely opponents in the Washington Commanders, shocking the world on Saturday night and handing the number one overall seeded Detroit Lions the loss at home as the Jalen Daniels hype grows. But Kyle, we talked on the program last week that the snow was going to be a factor. We talked about it, but I didn't think it was going to be that. I thought it was going to be more of a snow, rain, muddy mix, but it was like rivaling 2013 LaShawn McCoy type snow. Yeah. Would you not agree that the snow played more than a pivotal role as essentially the 12th man in that game against the Rams?
So, well, yeah, I mean, and I think I knew going in that the snow would play a role. I guess where I was wrong and I got crossed up was, I guess you look at it on the surface and you're like, man, snow game, LA team coming to Philadelphia, like that plays into the Eagles' hands. Yeah. I guess really what it ended up doing was it became kind of an equalizer for a team that was not as good as the Eagles and sort of needed that snow to sort of to keep themselves in the game. I mean, that just it totally messed up the conditions. It hurt our corners. It hurt our receivers. It became a reason that the Rams were in the game. When otherwise they really shouldn't have been. Like the Eagles went into that game as the much better team than the LA Rams. We saw what happened when they were on, in better conditions in LA, and we rolled them, we kicked their ass, and it ended up being a reason that the game was close. It became an equalizer for the Rams. I felt after the game that, you know what, the Rams needed that snow to be in that game, where the Eagles could have done without it. And we probably would have had a much easier time had it not been snowing. So it made for a great scenery. It ended up becoming, one of the more iconic playoff games in Philadelphia sports history, at least in terms of the photo shoot, the video, NFL film stuff like that. That can't write a better script than that. And just have to be glad at this point that it didn't end up being, one of the most miserable losses in Philadelphia sports history. So I'm glad they squeaked out of it, but I definitely misread what kind of a factor the snow would play in that game.
So I agree kind of what you're saying. I don't know if necessarily it was yeah, I guess I would call it an equalizer, but I think it did favor the Eagles more because let's in my opinion, of course, those two late game turnovers were directly related to the snow. The Matt Stafford fumble. He looked very uncomfortable and cold as hell. I ain't gonna lie to you. He's out there looking like he don't even want nothing to do with this at this point. To me, that had a major aspect. And then the fumble with the running back too. Those were snow-caused fumbles, snow-caused turnovers. I mean, it's a turnover. Both teams are susceptible. The Rams are just the ones that kind of committed it. Yeah. I agree with the snow being a factor, but I'm not necessarily going to say it's an equalizer. I thought it really affected both teams, but the Rams obviously suffered the diverse effects of the snow more than the Eagles did.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with that just because I think, well, first of all, Matt Stafford had a pretty damn good game. I mean, he threw for over 300 yards. I think wide receivers were able to get more open on our corners just because, and they pointed this out in the broadcast, that Darius Slay wasn't in a position to where he could stick his foot in the ground and commit to a certain route.
Yeah.
He had to back off a little bit, and that gave some of the receivers a little bit more space to get open. And you saw Stafford and McVay take big advantage of that. And I mean, you saw they marched right down after Saquon scored that touchdown, this 70-something yarder at the end of the game, when we went up 13 points, they marched right down the field and scored again. And then, I mean, with us ended up giving the ball back to them. I mean, they were in position to go right down the field again. You saw Puka go open, make an insane catch on the sideline. And you see A.J. Brown dropping, passes that he catches 99 out of 100 times. That I felt was an adverse effect of the snow. I think the fumbles that we forced, I mean, look, I don't know how you can say they're the snow when the Eagles have shown over the past 10 weeks of the season that they are turnover forcing machines. I mean, Jalen Carter popping the ball out of Kyron Williams' hands. That's Jalen Carter making a great play like he always does, and Kyron Williams being a fumble machine like he had been all season long. So I think without the snow, the Eagles were able to play a much more clean game, at least their in terms of their operation offensively, and probably would have been able to help them tighten up a little bit more on defense. So I definitely think the snow ended up helping the Rams more than it helped the Eagles, and it made the game sloppy, and that wasn't something that the Eagles needed. And you saw how close the game ended up getting because of the weather.
Yeah, I know. All I saw was Matt Stafford in the back end of the game, just kind of looking like, God, I want to be a million places, but right here, right now.
Well, how? I mean, he marched right down the field 2 times when they needed it the most. And really, the only reason that the game ended was because Jalen Carter was, for some ungodly reason, they decided to go one-on-one with Jalen Carter on the final 2 plays of the game. I mean, Matt Stafford was dealing. And by the way, the sack that Jalen Carter got on Matt Stafford, Tyler Higbee was wide open in the middle of the field. If he doesn't get there, that's a touchdown, and the Rams take the lead, and we could be sitting here talking about a loss. That snow helped the Rams way more than I anticipated.
I am just saying that on that particular play, to me, it kind of looked like Stafford just was really uncomfortable. And I thought, honestly, and you're right, it was funny. This game was sneaky competitive. You know, it didn't necessarily, I remember watching it, not feeling necessarily that scared about it, but here we are, 28-22 at the end of the game, and here come the Rams. I'm like, whoa, how did we get to this point? Obviously, we can talk some about the play calling with Kellen Moore, especially at the end of the game that led to that Rams final drive. Yeah, a little bit suspect, but the weather does dictate a lot of things. But I do want to discuss a couple things on the Eagles offense. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, again, I mean, I'm so getting tired of talking about it week after damn week, 26 carries, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kyle Quinn, he gashed him for over 300 yards of total offense the first time the Rams played the Eagles. Then they come in, and I don't know about you, Kyle. I know if I was the head coach of the Rams, I'd be like, I don't care if Jalen Hurts throws 500 yards and 18 touchdown passes. I don't care about that. Saquon Barkley ain't beating us. But the Rams are unable to once again do anything constructive against Saquon Barkley. I think it's like 525 total yards of offense in 2 games and like 4 touchdowns. As Saquon Barkley once again, Kyle Quinn, the offensive bright spot on this Philadelphia Eagle team, and they're continuing to win this one-layer type of game that, to me, it's very concerning, and we'll get deeper into the show, and I'll explain why I think that. But, again, let's talk about Saquon. So what do you think,
okay.
Kyle?
Yeah, dude, I mean, like a home run hitter, right? And this is the difference that you thought you were getting when you got Saquon Barkley as opposed to the last few years of Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift. Like, you can have efficient games on the ground where you're averaging 4.5 yards a clip, but you don't get the breakaway 70-yard touchdown runs like you did with Saquon. And to your point, I mean, the biggest difference in this game, like, this wasn't an efficient offensive day for the Eagles by any sense of the word, right? We were once again, as you've talked about all season long, dreadful in the red zone. I mean, they hardly even got into the red zone. They weren't really able to sustain drives. The Eagles' biggest moments in that game were 3 home runs, really, the Jalen Hurts 44-yard touchdown run and the 2 big Saquon Barkley runs. So, yeah, it's great. But to your point, not the most efficient offensive day. And that's, you can say the snow plays a little bit of a part in that. But that's been the Eagles for a very long time, very long stretch this season. I mean, they weren't even able to convert after Isaiah Rodgers basically got them at the doorstep, returning that fumble all the way to the goal line. They had the Dallas Goedert one that got to the goal line called back. Lane Johnson with a false start when they were doing the tush push. Like, that was it was not a very pretty day for the Eagles offense. But, 3 big home run plays, and we're sitting here talking about the Eagles advancing the NFC Championship. So it's good, right? I mean, you'll take that. You'll take the touchdowns any way you can get them. And that's sort of where you have to thank your lucky stars that you have a guy like Saquon Barkley. He's making you pay when you put 8 in the box. But when you put 8 in the box, it does seem like that could be something where, it's a good strategy for the defense to hold the running back, but it can also bite them to the point where once he gets past those 8 guys, nobody's stopping him. I mean, you saw twice in this game, Jalen Hurts and Lane Johnson both lift their hands up, signaling for a touchdown before Saquon even cleared the last 2 defenders. Like, you just know. So stacking the box, it was great. And it might have held them to like a less efficient average per yard per carry. But it leads to those home run shots. And that's been the hallmark of this Eagles offense.
Yeah, wasn't the last big run he turns to Jalen right before he hands off and says, "Watch this."
Yep.
I mean, come
Yeah.
on, man. What's going on? I get it. It's been something that I've never seen before. And I know there's a side of the Eagle fan base. I like to call them the slobbering homers that say, "Don't if it ain't fixed, don't break it." Or if it ain't broke, don't that's what I say. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then there's me who says, yeah, that's great until the shiny car has a dead battery. Now let's talk about the injuries with this team, and we're going to get to Jalen Hurts in a second. Saquon Barkley did have some problems with that left hand. He was kind of in and out of the game a little bit, trying to work some of those kinks out of that hand. Saquon, has he even? I don't think the ball's ever even seen daylight coming out of his hand all season long in terms of turnovers. But as we get deeper into this Final Four coming, are you concerned? Do you want to see another side of this offense? Do the Eagles have to get somebody else going in order to really punch the ticket to be a solid Super Bowl contender?
I mean, you're basically asking me, do I want these wins to be more comfortable? The answer is yes. Like I would love for this offense to be able to get going through the air. I mean, that's the biggest difference, I think, between the Eagles looking dominant in these wins and sort of scraping by. I mean, the passing game has not been efficient in the 2 playoff games that they played in really all season long. Now, in this game, you can attribute some of it to the weather. Like I said, A.J. Brown had a pretty huge drop, and that was a perfectly placed ball by Jalen Hurts, probably a touchdown that he falls back into. And that's a catch that A.J. Brown makes 9 out of 100 times. All of a sudden, you're talking about Jalen Hurts' stat line and the pass offense looking a little bit different. But, I mean, that's sort of the last domino that I think needs to fall for this Eagles offense to, really blow somebody away. However, I mean, and I talked about this on WIP all week, I almost want to wave the white flag on asking this offense or expecting this offense to be better. Like, it's been 19 weeks of us asking this, and we're in the NFC Championship game now. Could it bite us? It absolutely could. It absolutely could. But I mean, man, talk about something not being broke. Like, they're just not losing.
Yeah.
They win in a multitude of ways. The defense is unbelievably dominant, and Saquon Barkley is a beast. So, do I think that they're going to need to take it to another gear this week? And if they want to beat the Chiefs or the Bills in the Super Bowl, absolutely. But am I sitting here telling you I expect it, or I'm hoping, or like I need it? Like I'm throwing the towel in on that. I'm like Tony Evers, the Apollo's trainer, when he's getting his ass kicked by Drago, screaming, "Throw the damn towel!" Throwing the damn towel on it. Unfortunately.
Jalen Hurts on the game, 15 of 20, 128 yards. He had the big 44-yard touchdown run, but he also suffered a very significant knee injury that he played through. But it was kind of an issue. And earlier in the week, it was a problem. He's no longer on the injury report list. Let's talk about Jalen. I think we've kind of to the point that you just made. It's what it is at this point, and it's no sense in kind of trying to reinvent the wheel at this particular moment of the season. But again, another hum effort there by Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of that's your typical 2024 Jalen Hurts performance. You could definitely tell that he was limited in the later part of the game by the knee injury, and I think the offensive play calling suffered a little bit from it, and that could be just, I guess, due to simple miscommunication on how good they think his ankle is, how good, or the knee is, how good they thought his mobility might have been. But it bit him multiple times in that second half of the game. And it's definitely something that you got to keep an eye on. Now, I know he finished the game and it might have felt better as the game went on. That just the adrenaline, and maybe they'll shoot him up. Maybe they'll give him some Percocets or something before the game starts this week. But he's going to be wearing a brace. And I think one of the number one thing to watch out for, at least Eagles offensive wise, is watching how limited Jalen Hurts is in his mobility. But you have to hope at least that the coaching staff, knowing that going into this week, sort of builds escape hatches into the game plan. And I heard, actually, this is one of the more interesting things that I heard this week, was Nick Saban, Hurts' former coach at Alabama, saying that it could almost be a blessing in disguise when you consider that Jalen Hurts holds the ball for eternity in the pocket, and maybe the Eagles will start building in plays that are designed for him to get the ball out quickly so that he doesn't need to stand in the pocket on that knee and roll out of the pocket. So we'll see. I don't know, we'll find out when we get to the game, but the knee is a huge deal going into this one.
Now the question whether he can actually complete those types of passes is totally up in the air, because the quick play type offense, the quick hitters, the slants. It's not something that Jalen Hurts has been like really kind of perfecting throughout his career. It's been a problem. By the way, hi Joe. I don't know why I have your comment up there for like 5 minutes, but how you doing, Joe? Good to see you, man. Let's talk about AJ Brown. Through 2 playoff games, we got 3 receptions. We got 10 targets. We got 14 yards and no touchdowns. I don't know if he's starting to bring out a library onto the field now where he's choosing his books to read. I don't know how much longer you can keep a personality like AJ Brown under wraps, regardless of the whole waving pom-poms, we're winning, I don't care. You got to start wondering, and you can use the weather a little bit of as an excuse for that, maybe him not getting his towards the back end of that game. But Kyle, don't you got to start wondering how much longer is AJ Brown going to last before he goes full-blown TO on the sidelines for a lack of work?
So I'm not worried about that at this point, just because they're in the part of the season where legit, we do the whole thing in the season where, they won, but it didn't look pretty. Can they do this? They have 2 games left and they're Super Bowl champions. And I guarantee you everyone in that locker room is just like, we get the win and we're Super Bowl champions. That's the number one thing that's on our mind. I do believe, however, AJ's limited from that knee injury that he had before the playoffs. You can definitely see a lack of separation he's getting on guys. And, that could have been due to the snow too, but wasn't getting separation in the Green Bay game really much either. Now, you could say you want Jalen Hurts to take more one-on-one shots, but that's kind of been the reason that Hurts hasn't been turning the ball over. And you see the effect that turnovers have had on these teams in the postseason. I mean, the teams that have turned the ball over are all home. And the teams that haven't turned the ball over are all the 4 teams that are remaining in the postseason. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. Now, next season, if we start going a few weeks again and the passing game looks like this, then you start to wonder about what A.J. Brown's headspace is like at that point. But A.J. Brown said it himself, and I do actually believe him, that, look, they got 2 games left, and they win them both, they're Super Bowl champions. And they're going to be, the players, I do believe this, want that more than anything else in the world right now.
I hope so. And obviously that should be everyone's mindset at this point. Again, it's too late in the game to scrap it all and start over again. We got to get through to the finish line. I don't know. I don't know. I'm hopeful. Steve Fuentes checking in. What's up, fellas? This Eagles team reminds me of the Seahawks Super Bowl team. Solid coaching staff. Who's got a solid coach? Superstar running back. Yeah, I'll give you that. Okay quarterback and the best defense in the league. Thoughts on this comparison?
Yeah. No,
you agree with that?
I think it's one of the most spot on comparisons you can make for this Eagles team. The Seattle defense, Pete Carroll wasn't like an outstanding like offensive coach by any stretch of the word. He almost reminded me of Nick Sirianni back then. Russell Wilson, I think his stats that year are extremely reminiscent of the season that Jalen Hurts is having this year. Marshawn Lynch, a running back that the Seahawks leaned on big time, and Russell Wilson just sort of playing the kind of game where he doesn't turn the ball over, and the Legion of Boom, a great secondary. I think it's and that was, I think, led by either Dan Quinn or Gus Bradley, one of the two. Great defensive coordinator, which we also have in Vic Fangio, who's getting the absolute most out of a young defense, especially the secondary. I think the Seattle Seahawks comparison of the 2013 is probably the best comp that I've heard for this Eagles team. And Steve's not the first one that I've heard bring it up. And I think it's extremely appropriate. This team reminds me so much of that team.
I'm not ready to lay Eagles secondary to the Legion of Boom level. I think they're comparable somewhat, but I don't think they're quite there yet. I don't know who's Richard Sherman back there. Who's the Richard Sherman from the Philadelphia Eagles?
Oh, I mean, Darius Slay.
Are you kidding me?
Matt,
are you being serious?
Matt, have you watched Darius Slay this season?
Absolutely, I've watched.
Okay, he's like having a really, really good year.
Okay, Richard Sherman 2013 good year.
No, it doesn't. Not everything has to be like the best ever.
What are you saying? That's the comparison right now.
No, because you're taking the comparison way too literally. I'm saying a team that wins off of a strong running game and a defense that is built primarily off of relying on their secondary and who's really well coached is a good comparison, right? It doesn't have to be this guy isn't this guy. Like, no crap, dude, right? Darius Slay doesn't have to be Richard Sherman, but I mean, it's a veteran presence, a guy who's very sound technically, a good leader on the back end of the team, which Slay has been for the young guys. I mean, look, I've trashed Slay for a long time, but I can't deny the impact that he's had on this team this year. He's having a fantastic season. So I think that the Seahawks comparison is probably the singular best comparison to another team that you can make for this Eagles team.
So why don't we stop messing around and just compare them straight up to the 2000 Ravens? Let's just call them the 2000 Ravens defense.
Well, because
if we're not going
idiotic.
player by player, I mean
that would be dumb. It's not as good of a comparison.
Both sides of the Whoa, you're okay. So you're telling me the 2013 Seahawks defense was better than the 2000 Ravens defense?
No, Matt, that's not the point, dude.
I guess I'm missing the whole thing.
You really are. And
back it up and break it down slow for me, Kyle, please.
I'm just trying to explain to you that the comparison Steve is making is that this Eagles team is winning because they have a running back who's great, having a great season, a secondary who's the best aspect of the defensive unit, and they're really well coached under a guy like Vic Fangio, and they're leaning very heavily on the running back and not getting the most out of a quarterback, just not turning the ball over. All those things are 100% true.
Okay. I see what I know. It's an existential type thing. It's not player by player.
Well,
it's
Matt,
you're just finding a team. No, I get it. I do.
We're talking about a team that played over a decade ago. So, obviously, they're not the same players. I think the comparison Steve made must have went completely over your head.
I think it did. But now I think I got it now. Steve also says no interviews this week for Kellen Moore. Right? Should have had better game plan since the head coach. I disagree with that. I think it's part of the trappings of the profession, and I noticed some talk that people want that outlaw, that no coaches should be poached or interviews during the playoffs. I disagree with that, Kyle Quinn. You're a professional. You need to be able to time manage your time correctly and do the best thing. I'm not blaming a bad offensive game plan on his interviewing for head coaching jobs. I don't know where you come out on this.
I don't know if it should be outlawed per se, but 3 interviews of the week before you have a playoff game to play is excessive to me. That's all I'll say. And I know people are like, well, the interviews are only this long. It's not just the interviews. It's the prep time that he has to put into the interviews, because if he's serious about getting the head coaching job, then he has to put serious effort into it, right? He has to watch film for that team. He has to watch film for the other team and the third team. That makes 4 teams that he has to watch film on to prepare for, even 5 if you want to include the Eagles themselves, right? So that's a lot. So I see where Steve's coming from. I see where you're coming from. I don't necessarily think it needs to be outlawed, but 3 interviews for me last week was excessive.
Now, the Eagles could have also said, no, we do not grant you permission to speak to our offensive coordinator until the season's over, right?
Right. Yeah. And Nick Sirianni, when he was with the Colts, he had an interview with the Browns, I believe, while the Colts were in the playoffs, and refused to take it himself until their season was over. So, Nick can tell you all he wants about what he thinks about Kellen taking the interviews, but you saw Nick Sirianni himself in that same situation, and you saw where he really stood on it.
One last thing for Steven. We got to get back to the show, Steve. I just said best defense in the league, which statistically they are like the Seahawks defenses. I didn't say the secondary were the same. I said, oh, whatever, man. You guys are,
no, he's right.
I understand. Yeah, but why talk about the 2013 Seahawks? If you want to give me a good defense, talk about the 2000 Ravens, man.
Why would you do that? Why would? Because
in this point, it's interchangeable to me. He's talking about a good defense.
No, it's not. It's not interchangeable. Because he's not just talking about the defense. He's talking about the defense, the running back, and an okay quarterback. Trent Dilfer stunk.
He's an okay quarterback.
No, he stunk, Matt. He stunk.
Okay. All right. Whatever. Oh, okay. 85 Bears. We'll talk to 85 Bears.
Why? I mean,
because I'm trying to relate, man. I'm trying to get into the same frame of mind.
I mean, I cannot possibly understand why you're having trouble grasping this.
It's on me. All right, Kyle. For this game, let's get into the stat package. We got to talk about some Commanders, man. For the Eagles, as you mentioned it, a dreadful 0-for-2 in the red zone. Kyle Quinn, so far through the playoffs, the Eagles are a terrible 1-for-6 in the red zone in 2 games. 16% effective in the red zone. That's got to change. Points won this game, 13 points in the first half, 15 in the second. They committed 3 penalties for 14 yards. Did force 2 turnovers, have not committed a turnover yet in the playoffs. No turnovers against the Rams. They allowed Jalen Hurts to get sacked 7 times for 63 yards. Yes, most of those sacks, probably 6 of them, were due to Jalen Hurts holding on that football way too long, to include the safety. They got to Matt Stafford 5 times for 33 yards, and Nick Sirianni was 1 for 1 going forward on 4th down. I want to talk about 2 things in this little stat thing. The 7 sacks for 63 yards. Jalen's been sacked 9 times for 73 yards so far through 2 playoff games. He suffered a knee injury. Is it You mentioned the quick hitters. You mentioned getting some plays into the offense that gets the ball out of his hands quick. Are we going to have time before he completely breaks apart because he's getting massacred back there?
Yeah, well, I don't, so I don't think Mekhi Becton necessarily had his greatest game. Some of those were definitely Jalen Hurts holding onto the ball way too long. I mean, the safety, he probably could have gotten it out quicker, but that was about 2 seconds until he was getting somebody was right in his face. Mekhi Becton let somebody go right through him. Cam Jurgens looked like he was dealing a little bit with that back injury that we're going to get into, I'm sure, in a little bit. But yeah, that was sort of the perfect or imperfect mix of Jalen Hurts holding the ball too long and the offensive line not necessarily having their best day. That could have been due to the footing, that could be due to injuries, whatever. I'm not sure, but definitely not the best day for Jalen Hurts in the offense. And some of it definitely could have been due to his lack of mobility. The one before the half when he got sacked, and then I think at the end of the game, when they really needed to ice the game away, they had Jalen Hurts roll out a bootleg to his left, which could have been probably the dumbest play call that Kellen Moore could have called, knowing that your quarterback was limited in that way. Yep. And that one got him sacked too. So I think it was a terrible combination of Hurts just doing his thing where he holds the ball too long, middle of the O-line not having their best day, and Kellen Moore not really having matters there.
No, and then the other stat is a positive one. 2 more turnovers forced on Sunday. That gives the Eagle defense over the last 5 games a whopping 16 forced turnovers. Kyle, that's like all-time type stuff right there. I've never seen quite anything like it. To put it in some sort of context, it took the Eagles like 13 weeks to amass 12 turnovers all season. And now here we are through the last 5 games, 16 turnovers. I mentioned the Commanders have also generated 6 turnovers. Neither the Eagles or the Commanders have turned the football over at all in the playoffs. And I've been watching some turnover-laden playoff football across the NFL. Turnovers kill during the regular season. In the postseason, they are lethal. But yet we're seeing it a lot. And it was a big part of what happened on Saturday night in Detroit against the Commanders and Lions. And it was a big part on Sunday in the Eagles win. Is it really to the point now, Kyle, of who holds on to the football is going to win?
Yeah, it always is at this time of the year. And really the only reason that the Eagles haven't been blowing these teams out with the amount of turnovers they're forcing is the inefficiency of the offense and the not, like you said, not punching it in the red zone when they get those opportunities. So they clean that up, then you're going to see the Eagles run away from a team. There's only, however, 2 games left, maybe 1, for them to have to do that. So they definitely need to win the turnover battle this week against Washington. Now, look, you can look at both games against Washington. The first one, they forced a few turnovers on Jaden Daniels, who now rarely turns the ball over. Then that ended up being key in that game. And then you saw in the second game, we forced 5 turnovers against the Commanders, but our offense was unable to keep the defense off the field and unable to capitalize and score touchdowns off those, and that ended up biting us in the end of the game. So not only do you need to force turnovers, you can't commit them, and you have to cash in when you do get them.
Absolutely. And Steve's saying I got to bring up a team from when they wore leather helmets for Matt to get it. Listen, the 85 Bears didn't wear leather helmets. I mean, come on, man. I get it. God damn it. I get it. I'm sorry. It took me a couple of minutes. I apologize. All right. Okay. Let's now look forward because we got ourselves the 9th NFC Championship game in Philadelphia Eagles team history, the 8th in the last 20 some odd years. The Eagles are undefeated, Kyle. Oh, no, they're not. What am I talking about? No, never mind. I'll move past that. They're not undefeated in NFC Championship games at home. Totally got flashbacks of the Buccaneers, got flashbacks of the Panthers in my mind. So I'm wrong about that. But hey, listen, the last time they had an NFC Championship game at home, they did win and they won handily. But we have an all NFC East NFC Championship game. The first all NFC East championship game since the 86-87 season between the Redskins and Giants. First time in history that the Eagles and Commanders have ever met, or Redskins, the Washington football franchise, have ever met to decide who's going to the Super Bowl. Eagles got there, but we're out of a 28-22 win over the Rams and a mystifying, really fun game to watch on Saturday night. Commanders beat the Lions 45-31. Jaden Daniels was on display for all the world to see. Of course, we already have sort of inside intel. We've already seen him twice this year. But Kyle, before we break down this game, I want to get an overview about the Commanders, about the hype. Is it real? Is it sustainable? And then I want to ask you a very important question at the end of that. So go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm like almost still stunned by the Commanders going into Detroit and beating the Lions in that game. Now, Answer your question, whether it's sustainable, um, I would describe it more as unprecedented. I mean, rookie quarterback has never made it to the Super Bowl. And if he does this year, it would have to be after winning 3 straight games on the road in the playoffs as a 6 seed, as a rookie, and not only 3 straight road games in the playoffs, but their 4th straight road game in general. They went to Dallas in week 18 of the season in a game that they had to win to maintain seeding. They played all their starters. So this will be their 4th straight road game against a number 4 seed, a number 1 seed, and then a number 2 seed, all on the road with a rookie as a 6 seed. It would be very unprecedented. It already is unprecedented. It would be extremely improbable. Is it sustainable? You could argue it's due to happen for a rookie to get to a Super Bowl, but not this way. Like, it just, like, this would be one of the most incredible runs that we've ever seen for a team going to worst to first two. Like, it just, everything about it is so unprecedented.
Yeah, and that leads me to my vaunted question. I'm going to get the question of the week now. This is early in the show, but I'm going to get it over with now. With all the talk and some of the big talk around town, or some of the one of the main things I've heard that's kind of piqued my interest is this house money thing, where the Eagles have all the pressure, whereas the Commanders have none of the pressure. Because the Commanders, let's face it, aren't supposed to be here. They're a 4-win team from a year ago. They got a rookie quarterback. They have exceeded any kind of reasonable expectations on the 2024 NFL season in Washington. Haven't been to an NFC Championship game since 1992. Kyle, the last time the Redskins or Commanders Washington was in an NFC Championship game, I was 6 months out of high school. All right, that's a minute ago. And here they are. Yeah, it's a while. And here they are sitting on the precipice of the Super Bowl. So I've heard a lot of Homer Eagle fans say, "Oh, no, that's not the case. It's equally spread around that the Redskins are they have as much pressure to win as the Eagles do." Kyle, I say that's hooey. I say all the pressure nests completely with the Eagles in this game, and that makes the Commanders going into this football game all that more dangerous.
So I would agree with you that at this point, like, there's not really pressure on the Commanders. I agree with you. They're playing with house money. Does that make that much of a difference at this point? I'm not so sure. Like, it's not a secret to anyone, especially the Eagles now, that the Commanders are dangerous, right? I think it mattered a lot last week with the Lions as the 1 seed, who had not seen Jaden Daniels at all this season. This is going to be the 3rd time the Eagles play Jaden Daniels, and he beat them the last time he played them. They just upset the Lions in Detroit. I mean, if anyone in that building is shocked at this point about what they're seeing with the Commanders, then they're crazy, and I can't imagine that that's the case. The Commanders are playing loose, but I think the Eagles have done a very good job this season, very good job of stepping up to the moment and not getting engulfed in the we're the better team, we should win, and especially with the stakes where they're at right now. There might have been one game where they slipped up, the Carolina game, they didn't look great. But they've done a pretty good job in general of meeting the moment. And I think they understand just how big this moment is. So while there's more pressure on the Eagles, and it would look way worse for the Eagles if they lost, I don't think this is sneaking up on them. And it's not catching them by surprise with what the Commanders are doing right now.
Well, we'll see. Let's get to it, shall we? The Gridiron Database is reporting that the Eagles will go with their green tops and white bottoms, and the Commanders are going with their Wentz whites. I don't think I think they're going to go with their burgundy pants. If I was a betting man, I'd say that they're going to go with their burgundy pants. That is what the Gridiron Database is reporting for this game. And the uniform-wise forecast, weather in Philadelphia on Sunday, definitely a tale of 2 weeks. Not snowy. We got 43 and a 4% chance of rain, so it should be relatively comfortable to play a football game down at Lincoln Financial Field. Injury report, let's start with the Eagles. Of course, let's get with some of the heavy hitters on this thing. A.J. Brown, again, we talked about the knee. Could be definitely a factor of kind of holding him back. Now we get into some later in the week stuff, Kyle, and I want to get your initial reaction on it. Let's talk about the offensive line. Dallas Goedert, Cam Jurgens. Jurgens dealing with a back problem. Goddard dealing with an ankle issue. There's some talk around, and you got to the point where Landon Dickerson is taking snaps as the center. So that would mean, if I'm doing the math correctly, if Jurgens can't go, you would move Dickerson to center, and then you would put Steen on the offensive line, and then Calcaterra would have to play tight end. What if this is what's going to happen, and that's what the offensive line will look like on Sunday? What does this do to that vaunted Eagles running attack?
Well, do a lot. I mean, first of all, reshuffling the offensive line at this point in the season would would be very tough for them to have to do. I'll just put out there that I don't think there's any shot Cam Jurgens doesn't play. This is the NFC Championship game. While he's dealing with a back injury, if you heard Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata talk, they were both pretty much like, no, Cam's going to play. They just wanted to give Cam an extra rest day because of the back. They'll shoot him up with whatever the hell he needs, whether it's horse tranquilizer or something. I don't know, but they're going to give it to him before he goes out there for the NFC Championship game. He's going to play.
Horse tranquilizers?
I don't know. I just completely pulled that one out of nowhere. But he's a big dude. He's going to need something heavy. But he's going to take it. It's the NFC Championship game. They're not going to not play in the game, unless it's a debilitating injury. This one isn't. Now, it limit him, sure. But he's going to be out there. Goddard also had said today that he is going to be out there. So, while having two replacements on guys that are run blocking for Saquon would be a huge deal. Don't expect that to be the case this week.
The other notables, of course, Jalen Hurts now, who's off the injury report. I think that's a bunch of window dressing, honestly. I think he is a lot more immobile than anyone's going to let on. As you said, with the help of the RX, he might be okay. Lane Johnson also dealing with the knee problem. He was limited. Quinn Mitchell, who left the game against the Rams with a shoulder problem, has said he's a full go. But he was a limited participant. So we're at that stage of the season, and Saquon Barkley, of course, the wrist, it's not on there. But I don't know if there's anybody who's played significant time in the games is not dealing with something. At this point. But if the Eagles are not able to dress Cam Jurgens, if they do have to reshuffle the offensive line, and if Dallas Goedert can't go, Stoutland, you trust. What do you think the ramifications of that would be if they got to go with that type of offensive line?
It'd be huge. Look, like I said, reshuffling the offensive line would be very, very tough. And the Commanders, I think, are getting Jonathan Allen back this week, and he's one of the best players along that defensive line. It's a big deal. But like I said, I don't expect that to happen. I think the bigger worry is how effective Cam Jurgens is going to be blocking in the middle of the field. So.
For the Commanders, Baptiste, defensive end, limited to a shoulder problem. Our old friend Amadei Zacharias, limited with a hip. Frankie Louvu, the most hated man in Philadelphia apparently these days, is also dealing with shoulder problems. Dante Fowler for rest. You got Payne with the knee. You got Bobby Wagner with an ankle problem, and you got Jamison Crowder also limited with rest. So again, it's not everybody's feeling something. Now the Cosme thing too for the Commanders is pretty big. He is at this point, I'm hearing a game time decision as he tries to work. That could be huge if they don't have him.
Yeah, and I guess so. I didn't see game time decision. I heard he was done. I heard he was out.
Let me look. I got a report as of 2 hours ago, and it is saying he's doubtful. That's what it's saying.
Okay. So doubtful at this postseason has been essentially a death sentence for a guy. I've not seen an NFL player be doubtful before a game and end up playing. So I'm going to expect that Sam Cosme's out. That's a huge, huge loss for watching it.
It is. And let's now get into with the uniforms, with the injuries, with our weather situation. Kyle, Quinn, I want to hear what your key matchup is, Eagle offense versus Commander defense.
Yeah, and we just touched on it. It's if Cam Jurgens is limited, what's he going to look like versus Jonathan Allen? How are they going to try and make it so that Cam Jurgens is having a tough day? And if Jalen Hurts is limited on that knee, then the biggest thing the Commanders can do to hurt the Eagles offense is to make that be a problem. So it's Cam Jurgens versus Jonathan Allen, and that Commanders front 100%. They're going to need to find a way to give Cam Jurgens some help and make him more effective. So that's the one I'm watching in the trenches for the Eagles on offense.
Now, Jonathan Allen is a competent backup. He's not Cosme, but he is competent. It's not like they're falling off the cliff with the third string guy. He's a competent backup, but you're right. There is definitely a fall off there. Listen, Kyle, I'm going to go a little bit more like free thinking on mine. I'm saying Kellen Moore and his offensive play calling against the Washington Commanders and their offensive play calling, because this game has been touted, and a lot of people, depending on who you talk, we're looking at a 40-point outburst, 80 points, 70 points total in this game. Last time, 36-33. It was back and forth all game long. Can Kellen Moore, if it gets to that point to go toe-to-toe with Jaden Daniels and that offense, can he get quick touchdowns? Can the Eagles score fast? Can they keep up with the Commanders' offense as well? That, to me, I think, Kyle, is the biggest story for me to see if Jaden Daniels begins to kind of inflict his will upon the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I hate to say it, if it comes down to a fact, like if our defense is crumbling, we need a shootout, then we're probably in a little bit of trouble. I think the bigger matchup is probably Vic Fangio versus Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels. Like they need to have a good game plan to make sure that they limit the Commanders to, I don't know, like a 26 points and below. Like I think 27 points could win this game for the Eagles, hopefully.
And then now let's hear Kyle Quinn's Eagle defense versus Commander offense key matchup.
Yeah, and this is due heavily in part to the interior offensive lineman Sam Cosmi being injured. That's Jalen Carter versus whoever the hell's backing that guy up.
Yep.
If they and I'll even take it a step further. If they double team Jalen Carter, it's up to Nolan Smith, it's up to Josh Sweat, it's up to the Eagles to be able to rotate guys in that defensive line so that they're fresh. The Commanders are going to go no huddle to stop the Eagles from substituting those guys. So it's really Jalen Carter versus the interior, or Nolan Smith and Josh Sweat being able to win their one-on-ones on the outside.
So with all of this talk, we've forgotten all about the injury problems with Nakobe Dean, the linebacker core, Burks and Schroeder. I think that's the most intriguing matchup for me is what Jaden Daniels can do with that linebacker core. I'm telling you, and this is going to line up with my next point. I'm concerned about the middle of the field for the Commanders. I'm concerned about what Jaden Daniels might do to the middle of the field, both with his arm and with his legs.
Yeah.
We don't have the greatest. We're hurting without Nakobe Dean out there. And now that we have a mobile quarterback to deal with, we're going to see exactly how much we're hurting. So that's my main concern is Jaden Daniels versus the Eagles linebackers.
Yeah, and Jaden Daniels killed him the last time they played him. He had that 1 4th down conversion where he took off for about 12 yards. I think it was a 12-yard run, and that was it was a huge moment in the game. So they need to be on that 100%.
Now, what is your X factor? Where's the dark horse? What is the thing that's going to pop up and on Sunday night make you think, what? How did that happen, Colin?
Yeah, well, so the X factor to me is not a player. It is a body part. It's Jalen Hurts' knee. I mean, look, it's true. Like it is a completely different Eagles offense if Jalen Hurts has to be a statue in that pocket. Let's be honest, right? So it's whether or not Jalen Hurts' knee is good enough for him to be able to move, be able to escape. I doubt he's going to be able to cut and like plant on it and juke guys out. But can he get that edge? Can he take off? The sprained MCL is not usually hindering of a guy being able to pick up acceleration, pick up speed, but it really hurts a player from being able to plant and make moves like that. So I'm looking for that need to be fresh or good at least, or shot up with whatever the hell painkillers he needs, but or they just need to design a better offense around a limited quarterback. But it's Jalen Hurts' knee, 100%.
My X factor is an old friend, Kyle Quinn. It's an old Eagles friend, somebody that we embraced for so many years and was dominant in his role while he was here. And that's old number 86, Zach Ertz. Kyle, again, with the middle of the field being real suspect. I have major concerns that at a big game situation where this man has been before, he's got the ring to prove it, in a stadium which he did it so well in for so many years. Zach Ertz, even though he might be on the wrong side of his career, I think he still has enough juice in the tank. We saw him to kind of get a little medium work last week against the Lions. I think they lean on him heavy in this game, and I think Zach Ertz has a big game.
He could. I mean, I hope not. Right. I think a big part of what Zach Ertz was able to do in the last time we played them was C.J. Gardner-Johnson was out, and with Nakobe Dean in, they didn't. With Nakobe Dean out here, I think they're going to have to maybe move up one of those safeties. And Tristan McCollum was getting smoked by everybody in that fourth quarter. So hopefully C.J. Gardner-Johnson can keep his mouth shut, doesn't get ejected again, and he can handle Zach Ertz over the middle of the field. And
what are your 3 keys to Eagles victory?
Yeah, so the first one is, and this is huge because we just talked about this ad nauseum with all the teams that are remaining in the postseason have won the turnover battle. You have to win the turnover battle. The Lions lost it, and Jaden Daniels and the Commanders went into Detroit, and they were able to beat the Lions because they won the turnover battle. You can't keep them in the game by turning the ball over as often as the Lions did. The second one, and this is another hallmark of that Commanders offense, man, you need to stop them on 4th down. The Commanders love going for it on 4th down, and part of it is because Dan Quinn doesn't trust his defense, but the other part of it is because he trusts Jaden Daniels to be able to make the play. And you saw in the first game when we played them here, one of the most pivotal moments in the game was a 4th and 2 where Zach Bond smoked Jaden Daniels, popped them on the sideline. They didn't convert. We got the ball back. Saquon hit a home run, and that was the game. So they cannot allow the Commanders to convert those 3rd downs. And then the last one is try to dictate where Jaden Daniels runs to, where he scrambles to. You don't want to leave wide open lanes for him to take off and just kill you with his legs on the ground. That was a huge deal in that last game that we played him. But again, on that 4th down, we dictated where he ran. So Jalen Carter got through the middle, forced him to run to the outside, and Zach Bond was ready for him. They need to do that. So whether it's mush rush, whether it's pressure up the middle, stuff like that, they need to be the ones that tell Jaden Daniels where they want him to run. So they do all those 3 things. I think the better team ends up winning the day.
Yeah, my 3 keys are kind of online with yours. My first key or my 3rd key is the turnovers. We got to keep getting them. I mean, they've been doing it so flawlessly and so effectively over the past 5 games. It needs to continue to go on. Each team come in to this game not having committed a turnover. Something's got to give there. Something's going to give, and that might be the game or the difference. So yeah, I agree. I think the turnovers are huge. The turnover battle is huge. Number 2 is find an answer for the Jaden Daniels big play as well. We're very used to feasting on the big play from our quarterback. Well, now we're going to get an opportunity for the 3rd time this season to see what another quarterback who can move the football with his feet can do. And those 4th and 4, those 3rd and 14s are not gimmies anymore. They're not, and especially with a team like this. So they got to limit that, and they got to find an answer for that. And my number 1, very simple, is Jalen Hurts. Kyle, I've been saying it kind of all season. He needs to be better. He just needs to be better. He needs to be that quarterback that people expect him to be, and that a lot of people are making excuses for why he's not that. He needs to start proving that he is that.
Yeah, and he needs to be prepared to throw the ball. He needs to be prepared to throw the ball quick too, get it out of his hands. Like I said, I don't know how much of a limiting factor that knee is going to be for him, but it's a massive piece of this game is how effective Jalen Hurts is going to be. Totally agree.
All right, Kyle. So last week, let's refresh people's memories. You had the Eagles. I had the Eagles as well. So we both won. I had Jake Elliott, which I'm not going to give Jake Elliott MVP honors. But let me tell you, Kyle, wasn't for those 2 field goals. I don't know if we're sitting here talking about it, but of course, then he misses 2 extra points, which I don't know where you get that from. That's still an X factor that I'm not talking. Everyone's thinking about. It's in the back of everyone's mind. Every time he steps on the field, everyone's holding their breath. Yeah. But I had Jake Elliott. I'm not going to give him game MVPs. You had Saquon Barkley. Yeah, of course. I mean, what the hell not? I mean, how can I say no to that? 200 some odd yards. So Saquon Barkley with the MVP in that game. You're now 2-0. I'm 1-1. What do you have for a winner? Prediction, score, and an MVP.
Well, I mean, I predict that we're all going to be violently ill after the game, and not because we lost, but because it's going to be another one of those games, sort of like the Rams game, sort of like the last 2 games that we played the Commanders, where it's going to be tight. I'm not sleeping on the Commanders whatsoever at this point, even though we're 6.5-point favorites. I got the Eagles winning 27-23. Hopefully, not with Jaden Daniels with the ball in his hands in the final minutes of the game.
And your game MVP?
I'm going Jalen Carter. He's got a backup, center right guard up the middle there. It's good. Jalen Carter, game wrecker.
I like 28-24, and I like Ray's Hale, and give me Jaden Daniels as the game MVP.
When will you ever learn?
I said it. I'm going to say it. But, I do hope I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. And I hope we come back on this program next, or we won't be back next week. Regardless if they win or lose, we will not be back. We will be back the Thursday prior to the Super Bowl. And if they lose, we won't be back until the Thursday after the Super Bowl. It's a lot to remember, but it'll all work itself out. But I hope I'm wrong, Kyle. I really do.
Sure. I'm sure you do.
It's such a all right, Kyle Quinn, before I let you go, where can the folks out there find you?
So every day, Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on WIP with Joe and Hugh, producing the midday show, and on Twitter at Kyle_Quinn WIP.
All right, Kyle, listen, enjoy NFC Championship game. Win, lose, or draw. It's a great day. It's a great atmosphere. The city shuts the hell down. This is where everyone is focused. It's bathed in green. It makes you feel alive. And we've arrived in the semifinals. There's nothing stopping this team. I'm going to give them that. There's no reason why the Eagles can't advance into the Super Bowl. Yep. None. And matter of fact, it kind of looks like the gods have said you are going to the Super Bowl. I was setting all this up, but enjoy the weekend, Kyle. And that goes for everybody out there. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy what this is. It doesn't come too often.
Yep.
So you got to enjoy what you can, right, Kyle?
Yep. Yes, sir. And I hope we get to take down your Commanders this week and talk about the Eagles.
It's calling to my Commanders. All right, Kyle, get out of here, man. All right, Kyle Quinn, Kyle friggin' Quinn, joining me here on the program. Good for Kyle. You know, again, I have my takes. I don't believe. I haven't believed all season. What the hell am I going to start believing now? All right, 28-24, Eagles lose, and the Commanders go to the Super Bowl. Or the Eagles win. I can see either way, but I got to hold on to my narrative. 28-24. So let's look back at the divisional round of my picks. 3-1 I was through the division round. I did have the Eagles winning against the Rams. I also had Buffalo beating Baltimore and Kansas City beating Houston, but I did take Detroit to beat Washington. So I obviously wasn't perfect so far. 5-5 in the playoffs. Now we're going to move into the championship round. Of course, I got the Commanders beating the Eagles, and I'm taking Kansas City over Buffalo, setting up the Super Bowl of the ages, man. The Kansas City Chiefs versus the Washington Commanders, and the three-peat will occur for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's my prediction, and I'm sticking with it, folks. I want to thank Kyle. I want to thank everybody else for checking in. Remember, we got a busy night here on the network. I will be back around 10 o'clock or so, immediately following Flyers Islanders. I got the post-game thing tonight. Flyers and the Islanders on the Clear the Ice program, as you can see down there by the pretty little graphic. And then we will be back as a network on Sunday. Now, here you go. The Birds fly by, Eagles post game Sunday, immediately following the Commanders game with Sal G. I'm still toying with the idea of a pregame show. So we will have a word on that within the next 24 hours or so if we want to do one. And I'm also trying to pull everybody in for the post-game show. So have everybody, including all the It's a Wrap folk. So please stay tuned for everything that's going on. Thank you all for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day. Make sure you're checking me back out later on tonight. Flyers Islanders post-game for Clear the Ice and all the great things that it comes with it. Until then, take care.